belong to them. This is the Premier Soccer League promotional playoffs. Catch Baroka FC versus Richards Bay FC this Saturday, 8 June at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
There is fire on the mountain, and nobody seems to be on the run. Oh, there is fire on the mountain top, and no one is running. I wake up in the morning, tell you what I see on my TV screen. I see the blood of an innocent child, and everybody's watching. Now I'm looking out my window, and what do I see? I see an army of a soldier man marching across the street. Hey. What did it say to make you so blind to your conscience and reason? Could it be love for your country, or for the gun you use in killing? So there is fire on the mountain, and nobody seems to be on the run. Oh, there is fire on the mountain top, and no one is running. Hey, Mr. Loverman, can I get a chance to talk to you? 'Cause you are fooling with a dead man's corpse, and you don't know what you do. Oh, so little Lucy turned 16, and like the movie she's been seeing, she has a lover in her daddy. She can't tell nobody till she makes the evening news. For there is fire on the mountain, and nobody seems to be on the run. Oh, there is fire on the mountain top, and no one is running. Oh, yes. One day the river will overflow, and there'll be nowhere for us to go, and we will run, wishing we had put out the fire. Oh, Lord, for there is fire on the mountain, yeah, yeah, and there is nobody. Oh, there is fire on the mountain, and no one is running. So yeah, yeah, yeah. There is fire in Africa. Oh, fire everywhere.
It is Usher coming through with Fire on the Mountain, and that is taken from the album Jailer, which also birthed the single Jailer, which did incredibly well on the international charts. She's definitely a much adored talent, juggling her time between her paternal country of Nigeria and, of course, Paris, that she now calls home. That is how we open up the show on this fine Thursday. How quickly the week has galloped, with so many things are still on the agenda. I know a lot of people keeping a keen eye as to what is going to transpire out at Birchwood during the course of the day. I see Samgele, our SABC News colleague, on the screen when I glance there, already harassing the comrades as they sit for that very important conversation around coalition partners and the kinds of governments that they are looking to form moving into this new era. as we usher in the 7th Parliament. And of course, no doubt Ashraf is going to have more on that after 3. On our end, we are sticking to Youth Month and trying very hard to keep the theme going today with a focus on youth entrepreneurship. And we are going to be in conversation with Pat Mahlangu. Remember, Pat, we spoke to him just a few days ago about the Top Youth Brands Awards. And he's going to be back on the show today, engaging this conversation about youth entrepreneurs. And we're looking at everything that the youth face in their quest to ownership, and to be part of the economy. Also coming up, stages, pages, screens, and more. And we're going to be chatting to the Director of Arts, Culture, and Heritage in the city of Joburg, Vuyisile Shudulu, is going to be joining us in conversation. And of course, on the other side of 2 o'clock today, you might have a matter here that is pending or unresolved, and you probably want some clarity on this because it does affect our lives one way or another, right? So for our legal guide on the other side of 2, we're delving into issues around deceased estates. That is the topic of conversation. It's around deceased estates and anything that falls underneath this particular umbrella. We're going to be in conversation with. So perhaps you have an estate that's not finalized or that's sitting in limbo, or there's some issues surrounding it and why it's dragging for so long. In the meantime, you can jump ahead of the queue and send us a voice note on 061-410-4107. That is our WhatsApp line, or 086-000-2032. Let's take a quick pause. We'll be right back.
Channel your inner adventurer on Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30 on S3 as we're bathing in mud on an Eastern Cape safari. Blackwater tubing Storms River, free falling over Plet, having the time of our lives, cooking with South Africa's trailblazing salt chefs, and searching for the world's only whale crier in Hermanus. That's Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30. Repeat Sunday at 1 p.m. on S3.
Are you ready to empower yourself with an accredited tertiary qualification? Stadio Higher Education's distance learning programs will set you up for success. Whether you're balancing work and family, or you're a school leaver who must work to support yourself and your studies, Stadio offers access to high-quality, affordable qualifications in law, teacher education, commerce, admin and management, policing, and more. Mid-year applications are now open. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
EFC is live this Thursday. Two of the most thrilling fighting talents to have emerged from the Mother City in recent years, Tamelo Manyamala and Terrence Bolello, put everything on the line to face each other for the interim flyweight title, which guarantees a shot against the currently unavailable champion Nekazimulu Zulu later in the year. Also, Ayanda Zwane and Sibarashe Akonya fight for number 1 contendership. EFC 114 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
So we're approaching the 48th anniversary of June 16, which is in just a matter of days. And of course, June 16 being a important date within the context of South African history that saw the 1976 student uprising in Soweto. And this is a pivotal moment to reflect in as far as where we're at as South Africans, but to hone in even closer on the youth of South Africa and perhaps explore some of the issues that might occupy their minds, specifically when we keep talking around their participation in the economy and the various ways in which they can enter the South African business landscape. And we thought it only prudent for us to invite Pat Mahlangu, who is with the Lerato Agency, is the Lerato Agency founder and marketing expert and the person behind the Top 16 youth-owned brands. And we spoke to him just a few days ago. In fact, I think it was Monday that we spoke to Pat. How are you doing, Pat?
I'm very thankful yourself.
I'm great, thanks. Thank you for making the time once again. Let's reflect on this, right? It's It's the 48th anniversary since June 16, the uprising, and it's 30 years of democracy. And let's reflect on the state of South African youth in as far as their participation is concerned within the SA economy.
Sure. I mean, I think obviously it is well documented that the struggles that the youth of 1976 faced are far different from what the youth of today are facing. And I think from an economy perspective, I mean, Status say is documenting the employment statistics around the youth so well, and consistently so. Youth economic activity has been sort of on the decline, you know, and that is obviously concerning to any citizen, or should be concerning rather, to every citizen of this country. However, on the other side as well, we do have young people that are taking matters into their own hands by creating businesses that, you know, contribute positively, not only to the economy of this country, but to the overall image of South Africa. And I'm of the view that if we were to dial up on those young people, be it from a media perspective, just telling the narrative, we could get a lot more young people economically active. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which school of thought you are from, the only way, or the only viable way right now, is entrepreneurship for young people to become economically active. And how that looks like, it's either you start a barber shop or you start a brand that's going to employ a lot of people, but entrepreneurship is the only way that you can get more young people to start. And over the past, 30 years, I mean, we've seen a lot. Actually, I wouldn't say even past 30 years. I'll say the last decade or so. That's when we started to see a lot of young people starting businesses and entrepreneurship sort of becoming a cool thing. And the unfortunate part is that where youth entrepreneurs also find themselves in this period is that I don't think there is enough appreciation of those young people that have started, you know, their own businesses. Because we also see that, you know, when you engage with somewhat the older generation, and there's still older people, especially for some. I'm the first, first generation entrepreneur in my family, and someone who's doing it at this scale where I employ people and I have to pay massive amount of tax, and in the end, there's still that thing to say, but why don't you just get a job, you know?
Yeah.
And not do this entrepreneurship thing, because it seems to be very stressful. So there are those dynamics that are at play. And again, most young people get closed off just by virtue of being young.
Yeah.
Which one would think is counterintuitive. I can take the same idea. I mean, a young person will come up with an idea, and an older person would come up with the same idea. But if you go to market, if you look for investment, if you look for resources, the person who's slightly older stands a far better chance of getting support versus a young person.
And I guess what you're saying there, Pat, the later part of your sentiment is perhaps it speaks to the barriers that young people have to face when entering the business sector, right? That sort of the mistrust that might come with youth, and perhaps it's not about the age. It's more, I'm venturing to think that those in business would say it's more about the experience. If I'm going to hedge my bets, I'm going to hedge them on someone who's got a little bit more experience on the business terrain. But it still speaks to a challenge. It still speaks to a barrier for the younger business owner.
Absolutely. And I think that challenge can be easily circumvented if we had sort of we approach it with an open mind. Right? If you look at it, I mean, you look at some of the biggest inventions in the world, some of the brands that we love so much today, were actually founded by young people. But I'll give you, I'll bring it closer to home. Yes, you've got, abroad, you've got the Facebooks of this world, the Microsofts, and which were started by young people, and now they are big multinationals, multinational companies generating billions, or some of them are even value trillions of US dollars, right? But when they were started by young people. In South Africa, we have a brand called Discovery, founded by Adrian Gore. He was 28 when he started Discovery, right? But what Adrian Gore had was also good support. It was, I think, essentially corrected. It was Louis Dipina at First Rand Bank that took a bet on the young Adrian Gore and the idea that he had that today revolutionized the entire medical aid scheme fraternity. Today they even have a bank. Today they even have one of the best health schemes in the world that is being even exported to other countries in the form of Vitality, that you can find in Japan and in China and. But Adrian Gore was 28 when he went with the proposal, and someone said, "Okay, cool, we'll give you an office for 3 months, right? And we'll pay you a salary, and you're gonna work on this proposal and fine tune it to be the best possible version it can be." And young Adrian Gore sat in that office for that 3 months, worked on this thing, and today we have Discovery. Had someone said no to Adrian Gore, no, that idea is never going to work. Why must people be carrying over their savings for the following year? Why must we encourage people to live a healthy lifestyle and because we want them to get sick so that they see the need of having a medical aid? We wouldn't be having Discovery today. So what I think we need is a shift in mindset towards ideas in general. Never mind if they come from a young person or not, but when someone comes up with something new that's novel, let's embrace it.
Let me throw a spanner in the works and ask, do you think that at any point in these conversations, perhaps also race has something to do with it? Race in its ability to get you access and to get you resource. Do you think that has anything to do with it to some degree or extent? Because when you look at examples like Adrian Gore,
Hello?
Yes, Pat, can you hear me?
Hello?
Pat? Okay, we can hear you. Don't know what's going on. Let's try and get you back on the line again. And I wonder, like I said, I'm just putting a spanner in the works in what he is saying. 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on, 0614104107. I was saying, Pat, let me just put a spanner in the works there. As you sort of recount the story of a young Adrian Gore, and I wonder, when you look at innovators like Adrian Gore, when you look at Mark Zuckerberg, for instance, Mark Shuttleworth is another case. Do you think that to some degree, if any, race has something to do with the successes that we see for certain young entrepreneurs versus others?
I wouldn't say race is a huge factor, but obviously, say for example, as a young black entrepreneur starting out, right? By default, if you are going to seek for investment or for opportunities or resources, you're going to approach someone that looks like you.
Yeah.
If you think about it. So you're going to go to Uncle Tepo, or you're going to go to Uncle Jabu to help you with this. If you don't go, you're going to go to Louis Dipina, depending on what you are exposed to.
Yeah.
Right? But however, obviously, the race sector, particularly in a South African context, is one that somehow it matters in a way. Because as how the economy is structured, it's still sitting with, for example, white people. And I think for us as young black entrepreneurs, that's something that we need to obviously learn to overcome in a way. Someone once said that capital does not know race. A good idea does not know race.
Well, I mean, there are some that will argue that not to be true.
That's if you want to be political about it. If you look at a brand like Zulzi, for example. I'm not sure if you are familiar with delivery.
Zulzi.
Zulzi, funded by Donald, who ended up signing a deal with the ShopRite Group, for example. You know?
Yeah.
Donald is a young black person getting money from an Afrikaner-owned business. Obviously, I think it's a multitude of factors that we need to look into. Can there be something that can be done from a race perspective, that more black businessmen, particularly those that have money, that have made it through the PE deals, and the black professionals sitting in key positions in big corporates, just being open to ideas from young black entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
I'll say yes. There needs to be a fundamental shift in the mindset of those people that are sitting there. For a very long time, successful businesses were being built by white people, or we saw it being built by white people. I mean, also I can refer back to a brand like African Bank. You know, despite the many challenges that they faced, despite being told that they needed R1 million back in the day for them to start this bank, and every time they sort of met a criteria, then they would add a new one, but they persisted, and now we have African Bank.
Yeah, Pat. We have to wrap it there for this afternoon, but I think you've given some pointers, for those listening to consider as we reflect on the call we always make to young people to enter the economy and to participate in it. And perhaps all of us in our individual silos, can play a role in ensuring that the next brave entrepreneur who does enter the sector actually goes on to succeed. That was Pat Mahlangu, who is the founder of Lerato Agency and marketing expert. It's 1:30. Dineo standing by with your headline news.
Thank you very much, Bridget. Good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 1:30. EFF's legal counsel has argued that the composition of the Powers and Privileges Committee may give rise to unreasonableness, irrationality and bias. The party argues that there should be an independent person who makes a judgment in relation to the party. The party is seeking to invalidate the National Assembly rules that guide how members of parliament are disciplined. In other news, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says their special NEC meeting currently underway in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, will finalize their long-drawn discussion on the formation of the Government of National Unity. And the Nepalese army says troops have removed 11 tons of rubbish and 4 dead bodies from 3 Himalayan peaks during this year's cleanup campaign. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Youth Month on SAFM. Hashtag Freedom30. Hashtag Youth Month. Stages, pages, screens, and more on the Full Circle.
Catching up now with the Director of Arts, Culture and Heritage in the city of Johannesburg, Mr. Vuyisile Mshudulu, who is no stranger to the work that I do in terms of broadcasting. And today, we're thrilled to be discussing EMBO, which is a special event that's celebrating the centenary of Professor Mangaliso Robert Sobukwe through dialogue and song. And it's happening actually this weekend, June 8th and 9th, out in Soweto. How are you doing, Vuyisile? You good?
Good day, my sister, and good day to the listeners of SAFM.
Thank you for taking the time. So it's been a centenary, in honoring this life. Let's reflect firstly on just the significance and the gravitas and the contribution of Prof. Mangaliso Robert Sobukwe to South Africa.
So the 5th of December this year, had he been alive, Umkhulu Robert Sobukwe would have turned 100 years old. And you would recall that this is a man that under apartheid, after leading the Positive Action Campaign on the 21st of March 1960, was arrested and was never released from jail until his passing on the 25th of February 1978. And even during the period of his incarceration, his voice was silenced, his ideas were suppressed, his movements were banned. And this is really a way of us saying, has the post 1994 period really given impetus to the voice, the ideas, and the memory of Obao Sobukwe? And EMBO is a program, therefore, in response to that question, to say, how do we memorialize, how do we remember this griot of the anti-colonial struggle much better than we are currently. And so we have then packaged a program as the City of Johannesburg that is going to focus on 3 elements. The first will be doing a lecture and also a panel discussion, just to make sure that, the young generations that are coming up understand the depth of his ideas and the reason why he was so feared as by the state of apartheid. Then we will also have a mini exhibition, just to chronicle some of the experiences that he's had during his life and times. Then on Sunday, on the 9th on the 8th, all of this will happen on the 8th at the June 16 Memorial Acre. Then on the 9th, we will gather at the Soweto Theatre to pay tribute to him in song. And we have an exciting lineup of artists that have been built to pay tribute to him. And these artists were also very carefully selected to make sure that the sonics that we select, resonate with the person and his ideas. So we've got Odwa Bongo, who plays, indigenous musical instruments such as Umkhube, and he's going to be excavating the childhood memories of Bao Sobukwe through isiXhosa inspired music. And then we also have Zawadi Wamungu, who draws his sonic inspiration from the African continent. As we know that Bao Sobukwe was a staunch Pan-Africanist who was really passionate about the continent of Africa and the people of Africa. And Zawadi Wamungu is going to then draw from various sonic experiences to invoke his memory through song. Then you would recall that there was one meeting between Usobukwe and Ubiko, which incidentally happened in a place called Khakosi Khaleshiwe, which is where I grew up. And we are hoping to reinvigorate the memory of that meeting when Ipupolika Biko is going to pay tribute in song to Bao Sobukwe on the 9th of June on Sunday at the Soweto Theatre.
I mean, it sounds like quite the comprehensive and deliberate itinerary as well, with a very clear objective as to what it would desire to invoke in those who come to either one of the gatherings. Importantly so, considering the fact that we also in the third decade of democracy in this country, to bring front and center stage the ideology of this great man at this time.
Embo is a word that is derived from the isiXhosa language, which means going back to our essence. So in essence, what we are trying to do through the invocation of the memory of Obao Sobukwe is to really nudge us back to our essence as Africans, to remember who we are, to remember the things that are fundamental to us and our freedom. And I think that this program gives us a very important opportunity, and it is also catalytic to bring out the conversations that are necessary to reflect on the 30 years that we have traveled since 1994.
Yeah. And you touched a little bit about the sort of the generations that have come after the struggle of liberation, right? And I venture to say a lot of young South Africans are familiar with certain names that occupy the pages of history, but are not completely enlightened as to the events and the magnitude of contribution. And I almost want to say that Prof. Subukwe was one of those names.
Look, I mean, it was illegal to quote Ubao Sobukwe during apartheid. There are people who were arrested simply for quoting him. You would remember that he was also a practicing lawyer. So, and he had won many cases representing black people in court, for various things that the apartheid government was persecuting them for. And you could not even quote what he was saying in court. And we feel that silence has really permeated into, the post-1994 era. And we would like to really break that silence by making sure that there is a more diversified appreciation of the history of this country. And that history must also not be confined to certain individuals, but also not be confined to certain disciplines such as politics. There are many artists, for example, in the creative industry who played an important role. There are many people in the legal fraternity, and Ubao Sobukwe being one of them, who played an important role. But also, there are many people in various other facets of human endeavor, who used their calling as a form of resistance against the repugnant system of apartheid. And we have to make sure that, young people grow up to have a much deeper understanding of the complexity and the nuances of South African history.
It's definitely a date. That's if, people can still procure tickets. It's happening this coming weekend from the 8th until the 9th. And as you heard, it's a full itinerary. Tickets are on sale at Web Tickets for just 100 Rand. So it makes it affordable for everybody. Lots on the itinerary on the 8th with the lecture and the panel discussions, as well as a mini exhibition. And then, of course, on Sunday, everyone gathering at the Soweto Theatre in song. And really, it's going to be what you guys call a conscious gathering and bringing together African heritage-rooted music. It sounds like an incredible event, and we always appreciate the time. That is the Director of Arts, Culture and Heritage in the city, Mr. Vuyisile Mshutulu. Thank you once again for joining me this afternoon. You must have a good one.
Here on SAFM, we honor the contribution of the youth for our liberation. We also celebrate the liberation of our beloved country. Happy Youth Month, South Africa. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. You are listening to The Full Circle.
Listen, we are gearing up to go to Makhanda, as we always do for the National Arts Festival. And of course, you know that between now and then, we're going to bring you some conversations pertaining to everything that's going to be on the schedule for this year. And this year, they're celebrating 50 years of the National Arts Festival. And we thought we'd speak to one of the bold disruptors and innovators and creators that are going to be presenting some work at this year's festival. The 2023 Standard Bank Young Artist of the Year, Lauren Sukul, joins me now. How are you doing, Lauren?
Bridget, hello. I'm well. I'm very well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you so much for coming through. Congratulations. We haven't spoken since you were honored with the Standard Bank Young Artist of the Year. It's always a big deal, this award, and I think people don't understand sort of what this means within the world of arts and culture.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have been going to the National Arts Festival since I was 13 years old. I'm now 32 years old, and I've been watching and taking note of that award from then already. So it's kind of wild to be the one in that position, Very exciting, yeah.
What a wowzer. And by way of, when you talk about going to the National Arts Festival as far back as primary school and then obviously becoming a practicing creative yourself, focused in the world of contemporary dance, ultimately winning the Standard Bank Young Artist of the Year amongst a host of other accolades. For you as a creator, what does this mean for you professionally and for you personally? I remember talking to Lady Scully when she won the Standard Bank Young Artist of the Year in Visual Arts, and she said it literally happened the year she was aging out of youth. Which was about 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And she said, Bridge, I was ready with everything that I've done, with everywhere that my art has taken me and all the collector's walls that it adorns. This mattered more to me than anything else because it meant that my own creative family on my own continent recognized my voice and contribution.
Exactly. No, Scully said it. I mean, in the past few years, I've been gaining international recognition, and that's been amazing to take my artistic voice outside of South Africa and, make my points out there. But obviously, the thing you really want is recognition from your home country. And so to get that is just, it opens so many more doors for me in my home country to do that thing of disrupting and challenging the expectations of dance and the expectations of art on home ground, So, it's a big deal. It really is a big deal.
It really is. Let's talk about, your discipline, as much as I've just said contemporary dance, but it's much more than that because it actually encompasses quite a multitude of disciplines into a singular space.
Yes. Look, I describe myself as a contemporary artist with a foundation in dance. And finding that for myself about a year and a half ago has been the ticket to understanding how it is I approach art making. I am an artist. First and foremost, I am a contemporary artist. That means I'm aware of everything that is happening in the world, that is happening in myself. As I grow older, I become more conscious about how my identity and my lived experience connects to the world and my country, the world, and all the systems of power at play. And then the tool that I have is dance. And I can therefore use dance as a tool. I can bend that tool to my will, to my artistic voice. So yeah, I don't like to limit myself with the word dancer or choreographer because the way it's been introduced to me has been quite limiting. And what I'm doing is a little bit more out the box than that. So yeah, defining myself in that way has really helped me to navigate my own artistry with a bit more authenticity.
Yeah. This year on the calendar, we're anticipating I don't know, a mesmerizing schedule for the 50th anniversary of the National Arts Festival. And I'm led to believe, but I want to double check, that you presenting the Liverpool Biennale's Wozawenties at this year's stage or not?
I am. So I had my international premiere of Wozawenties last year at the Liverpool Biennial. And so I've decided for this marvelous 50th celebration to give audiences not one, but two shows. Ooh. So I'm offering a double. The title of the double bill is Two Sides of Scully's Coin, referring to Lady Scully, who mentioned, because as you might know, Lady Scully designed a 5 Rand coin in 2019.
Yes.
And so I'm kind of seeing that as a way to introduce my solo self, which people know me as. They know me for the solo practice that I've been doing all this time. But then to introduce group practice, which is something that I want to go into. I want to be working a bit more in community. I want to be working with other dancers from different companies, from spaces all around South Africa. I want to work with others and spread my ideas and the things that I've learned along the way with others. And so the solo work is called Woza Wenties, and then the group work is called Three Mensa Party, and that is a trio. And both works have to do with the underlying politics of being South African citizens who are dancers.
Listen, Lauren, I'm not going to even mince my words. I'm really excited about it, and I think for me, even just in the cheekiness of this double bill, in part paying homage to a fellow artist, but also recognizing the voices that often, and I know, for instance, Skoli is very preoccupied with preserving the history and the heritage of her people, now colloquially referred as colored peoples of South Africa. So I almost feel like, to some degree, you tying in all of these various conversations onto one stage through the work that you're presenting.
100%. I am privy to the conversations that Skoli, who I see as a fellow disruptor, is turning up in her work, and I'm definitely bringing that into my work as well. Woza Wenties specifically is about, what it aims to do is to link the church body, the school body, and the dance institution as agents of the colonial project. And I'm doing that investigating my own sense of Africanness or blackness as a so-called colored person. I feel that a great disadvantage for so-called colored people has been this kind of delinking from our African heritage. And I personally am from Durban, South Africa, so part of my lineage is Zulu. So I am in a personal process of unpacking where are my roots, what they mean, and what that also means in terms of spirituality. That work is actually, it's got quite a spiritual motivation, right? And then in the group work, it's a multicultural group. So I have dancer performers who are coming from 3 different cultures, and that is definitely being pulled into the work. Because what happens with dance is that it's almost like, I don't know if there's other people here listening who have gone through like a dance training thing. There's often this thing of like, okay, when you come into the studio, you leave your baggage at the door. Basically, you leave your baggage, your heart, you leave your identity, you leave everything at the door. Come inside, and you turn into a machine. And what I'm trying to do here, I'm not trying to like create 3 people who must look the same, dance the same, be the same, because they're not the same. They come from different backgrounds. So a large part of the process has been excavating some of their like personal stories, things that they're grappling with. Also cognizance of the 30-year democracy mark that we're in, and cognizance of the fact that they are the Gen Zs come with their own energy into things.
Absolutely.
And just wanting to put on something that is authentic to the humans that are dancing and drawing from their cultural backgrounds as well, which also links back to the 2 sides of Skoli's coin. The one side is me and the other is multicultural.
We look forward to seeing your production on stage at the National Arts Festival. And once again, congratulations walking away with that Standard Bank Young Artist of the Year. That was Lauren Sukul joining us. It's just gone 10 to 2 o'clock. It's time for Kids Corner.
Mama Kitty, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megaliters of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they've encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue and have the Rand water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand water beacons so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
The human papilloma virus, or HPV, is a very common virus that affects all genders. Around 8 out of 10 people will get the HPV infection at some point in their lives. Most people with HPV do not know that they have the infection. HPV can cause cervical and other cancers, but here's the good news. HPV vaccination can prevent more than 90% of these cancers. The HPV vaccine is recommended early, starting from age 9. Protect what matters to you for a future free from HPV-related cancers. Speak to your pharmacist or clinic sister about HPV vaccination. This message was brought to you by MSD.
The clock is on a downhill towards the world's most prestigious games, with a wide variety of exhilarating action such as aquatics, athletics, gymnastics, boxing, breakdancing, football, and many more. The 6th of June marks 50 days to the Olympics. The world's elite athletes are all eyeing a podium finish. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. Experience the Olympic Games Paris 2024 from Friday 26 July until Sunday 11 August. Live on SABC TV channels and SABC radio stations. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
Hello friends and welcome to Nali Bali. How was your day today? I hope you had a great day at school. Don't forget to write your homework. But here's a story to refresh your mind from your busy day at school. Today's story is called Matty and the Magical Apple Tree, written by Bradley Pals. But before we listen to today's story, let's all get up and dance! There was once a young woman named Matty. She lived on a small farm where the soil was hard and work was tough. With determination, she toiled under the hot sun to grow enough vegetable to sell at the bustling market nearby. When her crops were ready, and she had more than enough to spare, Matty packed a basket and headed to the market, her cheeks glowing with excitement.
Today, I will sell all these vegetables and maybe get a treat for myself,
she thought. You see, Matty's favorite treat awaited her at the market. It was apples. Big, juicy, delicious apples. She couldn't resist their tempting sweetness. They were her reward for all her hard work. At the fruit stall, Matty met a friendly old lady whose cheeks were as rosy as ripe apples. Her eyes twinkled as she watched Matty admire the colorful fruit. Matty's thoughts danced around as she pondered which apples to buy for the next baking adventure.
Red apples, delicious for a cake.
Matty said aloud as she picked up the red apple.
And maybe some Granny Smith apples for a pie. And a few Honeycrisp apples for muffins. And definitely some golden delicious apples for a warm apple crumble.
As she named each apple, Matty added them to her basket. The old lady chuckled. She reached out and handed Matty a golden apple.
Anyone who loves apples this much deserves a special treat. Here you go. Take this special apple. It will always bring you joy.
The old lady said,
Thank you very much.
Matty said gratefully. The golden apple was bigger and more beautiful than the other apples she had. She couldn't wait to get home and try it. As the sun dipped behind the hills, Matty returned to her farm. She carefully sorted and cleaned all the apples, humming happily as she worked. She would bake all the delicious treats she had thought of, but she saved the special golden apple as a treat to eat. Once Matty had sorted and cleaned all the apples, she picked up the special golden apple.
Now for my treat,
Matty said. But as she was about to take a bite, a tiny head poked out of a hole in the apple.
Hey, don't eat me!
A little voice squeaked. Matty dropped the apple in surprise.
What in the world?
Matty gasped. The worm wrinkled out, his eyes wide and apologetic.
Oh, I'm sorry for nibbling your apple, but it was so tasty.
The worm said. Matty couldn't decide if she should be angry or not. The old lady had said the apple would always bring her joy, but now she wasn't sure. Eventually Matty sighed and said,
Little worm, you are so lucky that I'm in a good mood today. Let me bury your apple in my backyard so that you can eat it in peace, away from the birds.
As Matty placed the apple in the hole she had made in the ground, the worm said,
Goodbye, Matty. I promise to repay you for your kindness.
Matty waved goodbye and returned to her baking. The next morning, as the first rays of the sun painted the sky, Matty's eyes opened to the sweetest scent she had ever smelled. She rushed outside and her jaw dropped in astonishment. Right before her eyes stood a gigantic apple tree, its branches heavy with the most magnificent apples that she's ever seen. Matty danced around the tree, her laughter mingling with the songs of the birds. She picked the apples one by one, marveling at the miracle that had taken place overnight. That evening, Matty returned to the tree, placing a freshly baked muffin at its roots.
Thank you very much. The old lady was right after all, because this tree will indeed always bring me joy,
she whispered. And so we come to the end of another Nali Bali story time. Today's story was called Matty and the Magical Apple Tree, written by Bradley Pauls. Did you know that reading and telling stories to children at home can help them do better at school? If you want free stories to read to your children or for your children to enjoy on their own, visit Nali Bali website www.nalibali.org or Mobi site www.nalibali.mobi. You will find stories in 11 South African languages, as well as tips for reading and sharing stories with your children to grow their potential. Also look out for the bilingual Nali Bali Reading for Enjoyment supplements with great children's stories and activities available in newspapers. Nali Bali, it starts with a story.
Top stories: EFF challenges contempt of parliament ruling in court, and ANC-NEC meeting to pave way forward for new administration. With the news, I'm Dino Mutau. Good afternoon. EFF's legal counsel has argued that the composition of the Powers and Privileges Committee may give rise to irrationality and bias. The party is seeking to invalidate the National Assembly rules that guide how members of parliament are disciplined. This after 6 EFF members, including party leader Julius Malema, were found to be in contempt of parliament last year after storming the stage during President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address. EFF's counsel, Advocate Camille Primhead.
About whether or not that procedure, remember in section 12.3, the entitlement of an MP charged with contempt is the entitlement to a reasonable and a procedurally fair process. We say that because of the way in which the discretion afforded to the majority is unfettered, in the absence of an independent fact finder or the appropriate guidelines, you create the same problem here, that the entitlement is subject to the tyranny of the majority, and that's where the danger arises.
We shift gear now to some election news. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says their special NEC meeting currently underway in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, will finalize their long-run discussion on the formation of the Government of National Unity. Today's meeting was necessitated by, among others, the ANC's failure to secure a majority to form government. Mbalula says they expect to come up with a decision that will lead them to the constitution of government within the required 14 days.
We started with the officials meeting where we mapped the strategic framework for the ANC. That strategic framework was presented to the National Working Committee. Now the National Working Committee today will report to the National Executive Committee of the ANC. And what then is the way forward in relation to the talks about talks, and also in relation to the consultation and engagement in the exploratory discussions with other political parties we have heard. And then on the basis of the framework we will present here today, the National Executive Committee will deliberate and take a decision.
In other party news, some members of the Umkhonto Wesizwe MK party in Mpumalanga are reported to be opposed to the appointment of Mary Phadi as the party's provincial convener. The members have allegedly written to the party leadership rejecting Phadi's appointment. The party leader Jacob Zuma established provincial task teams after the party's rally in Emalahleni ahead of the general elections. Phadi is accused of being absent when members were campaigning and allegedly aligned herself with people opposed to their ideology. Phadi says the allegations leveled against her are baseless.
We note that there's a letter that has been circulating of allegations labeled against me. But then when we check who's the author of the letter is not signed, and the letter might have been coming from the comrades that do not want to accept the fact that the previous structure was an interim structure. Look, MK is a new political party, and it is going to be normal for us to be able to find a footing. And, we will get a consensus from time to time, but these concerns will fade away.
Moving to the Western Cape, the city of Cape Town says more than 2,000 people have been affected by flooding in several informal settlements. The electricity department is attending to weather-related power outages in several areas as heavy rains and inclement weather continues. Disaster risk management spokesperson Charlotte Powell says downpours are expected to continue throughout the day.
Areas include Kailicha, Strand, Guguletu, Solaris Boss Village, Wallasdean, Fakisklaw, Blukumbos and Hart Bay. Humanitarian relief is being provided by Gift of the Givers, the Mustadafin Foundation and Ashrafal Foundation. Roads and stormwater have been issuing milling and sandbags on request in certain areas. Various roadways are flooded across the city. The Roads and Stormwater Department is assisting with unblocking of drains and clearing roadways.
Lastly, the Nepalese army says troops have removed 11 tons of rubbish and 4 dead bodies from 3 Himalayan peaks during this year's cleanup campaign. It took 55 days to recover the trash. The BBC's Anbarasan Ethrajan reports.
Mount Everest is often described as the world's highest garbage dump, as the slopes are littered with discarded oxygen canisters, tents, food containers, and human feces. No one knows how much rubbish is left on the mountains. Sometimes the contamination spills through the glaciers as they melt due to climate change. The garbage is sometimes dumped into pits outside nearby villages, polluting waterways and posing health hazards to the local population.
Recapping the top story this hour, EFF's legal counsel has argued that the composition of the Powers and Privileges Committee may give rise to irrationality and bias. The party is seeking to invalidate the National Assembly rules that guide how members of Parliament are disciplined. Headlines at 2:30 for SAFM News. I'm Dino Mutaung.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
When the 5 years on your Audi Freeway plan comes to an end, what's next for your Audi journey? Extend your cover with the Audi Freeway Plan Extension. Get uninterrupted service excellence and continued peace of mind for up to 15 years or 300,000 kilometers. Or choose Audi Value Service, a convenient and affordable plan which covers your servicing needs over 2 years or 30,000 kilometers. Keep your Audi with Audi and experience value beyond tomorrow. Visit audi.co.za to find out more.
Bafana, the AFCON 2023 bronze medalist takes on Zimbabwe Tuesday, the 11th of June 2024 at Free State Stadium at 6 p.m. Gates open at 3 p.m. and tickets are available for 50 Rand for adults and 20 Rand for children under 12. Scholars in uniform and students, student card required at Ticket Pro. Come dressed up to support Bafana to win prizes. If you're not in Mangaung, catch the game on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 at 6 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. For more details, visit safa.net and Bafana on X and TikTok.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Monewa coming through with Eastbank. It's just gone 10 past 2 o'clock, according to our watch on this side. The final hour of the show this afternoon. And we thought we'd indulge a legal conversation today because it is Thursday. And look at deceased estates, transforming deceased estates administration. And there is a call for far more efficacy and relief in as far as this is concerned. But we did ask you at the beginning of the show to say, if you have any queries or perhaps you need some advice or guidance or information in as far as how you can navigate the estate of a deceased beloved, you are more than welcome to send us a voice note on 061-410-4107, or you can give us a call on 086-000-2032. I know that a lot of people really just get frustrated around winding down estates and the likes. So we thought that we'd invite Denisha Nadesan, who is the Capital Legacy Executive Director of Estates, to help us work our way through this one today. How are you doing, Denisha?
Hi, Bridget. Thanks for inviting me. I'm well. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for taking the time. As if it wasn't enough already, dealing with the loss of a loved one, a family member, and then you have to deal with all the administrative paperwork and the red tape and everything that then sort of gets activated when you are winding down an estate. Firstly, let's start by, why is this process so cumbersome? Why is it not a little bit more streamlined?
Yeah, so yeah, exactly what you said. I mean, it's hard enough to lose someone who joined you at the dinner table for decades, and whether it's a parent, a child, a business partner. To add to this, it gets even harder when the estate administration process is, and currently in its form, is complicated, long, and expensive. When I say complicated, I mean there's lots of legislation that needs to be followed, like the Administration of Estates Act, the Wills Act, the Estates Duty Act. It's long. We're so dependent on many third parties to follow the right processes in order for estate administration to be completed. And truth be told, it is expensive. I don't think anyone ever tells you how expensive dying is. At Capital Legacy, I mean, we believe that some of these burdens can be overcome by certain things, and we'll take you through some of our thoughts and our transformation plans with regards to the industry.
Yeah. For anybody who's not encountered the term winding down an estate, so maybe they've been too young to pay attention, especially in our African culture, some things are the preserve of the older family members. So even if you're in your 20s and your 30s, but for as long as there's a rakhadi or malume that can oversee it, you really don't bother yourself with it until it's your generation's turn to take on the reins. Explain to us what the winding down an estate essentially means.
Yeah. So when a person passes away, that's when an estate becomes active, irrespective of whether it's reported to the master's office as yet. Okay. So one of the first steps in reporting the estate to the master's office is to sit down with the family, meet with them, and complete what's called a reporting pack to onboard the estate. Onboarding means we've recorded all of the assets and liabilities and tasks that's required to administer the estate. The Administration of Estates Act sets out the rules to be followed or processes to be followed to successfully wind up an estate. The first thing that the Act requires you to do is report the estate within 14 days of death. And I can tell you now that not many people know that they need to report the estate within 14 days of somebody passing away. Sometimes it's difficult to even get through the funeral in the first 14 days, and just dealing with the loss of the person that you've had there all this time, and now to think of all of the admin that you need to do thereafter. Once the estate is reported to the Master of the High Court, he issues what's called a letter of executorship, where an executor is officially appointed. If there is no letter of executorship, there is no one actually has authority to deal with the estate. Therefore, it's one of the first steps, but most crucial steps in the estate administration process. I'm not going to go into too much detail of the steps, but however, the executor's responsibility is to make sure that he or she collects all of the assets in the estates, identifies what are the liabilities in the estate, draft what's called a liquidation and distribution account, and make sure that the correct distribution happens according to the account and according to the will.
Yeah. Let's also, focus a little bit on the executorship, because I've heard this before with friends and family who've had people pass on that they were waiting for this letter from the High Court, the master's letter of the High Court. Maybe let's explain that, because it sounds like those are crucial steps, right? So you report within 14 days of death, and then the master of the High Court issues this letter. Do we know where? Firstly, where do we go to report? And then how do we then know to go to the master of the High Court? And what must we have on hand?
Yeah. So the reporting process as it stands in terms of the Act is a bit complicated. There's a whole lot of formal documents that needs to be completed by the closest family relatives or by the executor of the estate. There's a few originally certified documents that is in a pack that we take to the master's office. I can tell you, if you are doing it on your own, you're probably going to get really, really frustrated with regards to going in, standing in queues. It is highly likely that the documents are incorrect, being sent back to correct the documents, come back again, book an appointment, those sort of things. How we've done it to try and streamline the process is we've made sure that when an estate consultant goes out to meet with the family, we have matched for a like-for-like situation of onboarding the estate as well as reporting the estate. So we don't ask for different information that's required for estate administration at Capital Legacy and the reporting information that's needed for the master of the High Court. This has saved our beneficiaries a whole lot of time in terms of making sure that whatever information we collect is relevant for the master to issue that letter of executorship as soon as possible. In terms of the Act, the master is required to issue this letter of executorship within 21 days. We do know that is not always the case.
Sure. It sounds so complicated, Denisha. 086 000 2032 is the number that you should call, and 061 410 4107. And then let me also settle this then. Does it become then advisable? Will week always comes through and we talk about wills and having your wills done, drafted at the bank or drafted with an entity such as Capital Legacy, etc. Does it become advisable then to rather have that third party take over your affairs versus you having these things absent, wills and things of that, and the documentation to say Capital Legacy are going to oversee my affairs in the event of death?
Yeah. So for me, I believe that the burdens can be overcome by two things specifically. Number one, by starting by having a valid will in place to ensure that the distribution of your estate will be carried out in the manner that you want. You will be able to do things like make sure that your minor children's inheritance is protected in something called a testamentary trust. If you don't have a will, you can't create a testamentary trust. The same thing for your surviving spouse. If you want to make sure that your surviving spouse's inheritance is protected, instead of maybe letting your spouse handle the money on their own, maybe put it into a testamentary trust. We could write an interesting book on the different scenarios that we had to live through with our beneficiaries, where they didn't have a will. We had to navigate through that. And I mean, proper heartache was experienced, And for us, the second thing that we think will help the industry quite a bit is a transformation in legislation with regards to deceased estate administration. That's quite archaic at this moment, as well as the banking sectors.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, speaking of that, what are your suggestions in as far as transforming legislation? And I do know that there is a collaborative effort between Capital Legacy and some of the suggestions that you're putting forward at the Masters of the High Court.
Yeah. Yeah. So the challenge, let me just go into the challenges before I go into why we're saying it's time for transformation. Okay. There's a serious lack of education around estate planning. There's just not enough South Africans who have a valid will in place, which resulted in several issues, including family feuds, challenges on appointment of executor, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Where there are wills drafted, there's just not enough planning that goes into things like your cash needs to settle your debts. Or even there's a disconnect between the person that visits the family when someone passes away and the eventual conveyancer who's going to transfer the deceased property to the beneficiaries. Other challenges that we've seen include pre-estate issues like divorces not dealt with, predeceased spouse's estate not dealt with, and even as far as the number of businesses that are registered under the deceased name, but those are inactive businesses. And everybody assumes that because it's inactive, it doesn't need to be dealt with. But that's not how it works. The other challenge which we spoke about is the dependence on third parties. And as executors, our third party that we are not in direct control of is the Master of the High Court. The Master is a creature of statute. He has to issue a letter of executorship or we can't do our work. He has to register the testamentary trust so that we can protect our minors' inheritance. He examines the work that is done by the executors and the estate accounts, and he deals with things like disputes. The other third party that has a massive role to play in the lengthy processes that we go through in administration of estate are the banks, because they have to issue what's called a certificate of balance that gives us a snapshot on the date of death that this was the amount in the deceased bank account, and these are the transactions that happen. And those transactions gives a lot of information in terms of what are the assets that need to be collected, as well as the creditors that we need to deal with.
Sure.
Going to the second part of your question with regards to transformation. Well, we've been applying our minds quite thoroughly, and we've done some deep thinking into where we believe transformation needs to come in. And there's three approaches that we are going to lobby for. The first one is in the operations of the Master of the High Court. But let me tell you, Bridget, it is really not all that bad. They have been making efforts to join the rest of the digital world. They do have a current online reporting system, but there are some technical challenges, but they're definitely moving in the right direction. Practically, the job of the executor is to onboard the estate, and the capturing and the master's office captures the exact same information that an executor captures.
Yeah.
So the work that's getting done is relatively identical. However, the manual capture and the physical documents are not efficient for the master's office, especially when they get compounded with issues like staff shortage, home affairs being offline, equipment failures, people go on forced leave because they're going to lose it for the next year, those sort of things. I believe we would be able to reduce this time wastage in capturing information to issue a letter of executorship, and the master can serve the public more effectively. So allow the executors to do the work of the executors and let the master do the work of the master.
I mean, I did forewarn our listeners that we are going to be talking to you guys at Capital Legacy, and we've got Denisha Naudison joining us. 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on, or 061 410 4107. Just to give you, as much as Denisha can't give you precise and exact advice because she doesn't know the exact circumstances that are prevailing in your situation, but just to give you maybe some guidance if you are caught in a hurdle maybe there's something that is missing in your applications or your filing that you're not aware of, or there's some place where your matter has stalled in as far as concluding, wrapping up this estate and the steps that you can take further or you can explore in order to have all the matters concluded. 0614104107 is our WhatsApp line. In fact, let's go to WhatsApp and see what's on your mind.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Hi guys, my question is not so much about the deceased. Well, it's probably is what you call estate, deceased person's estate. My granny had a property in town where we live, so she transferred the property while she was alive into her children and their wives' names, which are six children and their wives. Now, I've got a father that's what you call in a mental hospital, right? So I want to find out if there's anything I can do to transfer the property into my name or piece of it or something like that.
Good afternoon, Bridget. Regarding deceased estates, I'm dealing with my mother's estate. She was still registered at Home Affairs as married. We cannot find my father's identity number. I have requested a marriage certificate, which I have received, but there is no identity number on it due to the year. What is the way forward now? I have claimed for an unabridged death certificate for my father, and this is where I am stuck, waiting. Thank you.
It's anonymous here. My parent passed away 2007, 2008. Other family members got their share of the estate. They asked me, I told them yes, I'm willing to come and get my estate, but up until today, I didn't go, but I'm ready now to go. So how can one go and collect his part of the estate ever since 2007, 2008?
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
All right, we'll come back on the other side of this and maybe get some guidance as to what could be your potential next step with my guest from Capital Legacy, the Executive Director of Estates. For now, though, let's get into the headline news.
With the headlines at 2:30, I am Dino Motaung. Good afternoon. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has dismissed protest outside their special NEC meeting in Boksburg as misplaced and based on disinformation. In other news, EFF's legal counsel has argued that the composition of the Powers and Privileges Committee may give rise to irrationality and bias. The party is seeking to invalidate the National Assembly rules that guide how members of parliament are disciplined. And South Korea's child obesity rates have nearly quadrupled in the last 5 years. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
We have the expertise of Tanisha Nadesan joining us on the line, and she's with Capital Legacy. She's the Executive Director of Estates as we talk around transforming deceased estates. And of course, we invited you, as we often do when we have experts in certain areas, to maybe field some questions and queries. And Tanisha, I'm sure you were jotting it down on your end as well. We'll just go in reverse. And maybe you can just give us a pointer or two for our listeners. 2007, hadn't collected his portions of the estate. And I guess wondering if he's still well within to go and do that.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. From 2007, it's quite a long time back. I'm not sure whether the caller is aware of who the appointed executor is and which master's office the estate is registered, but that would be the first step for him to claim his inheritance. There is no prescription on something like inheritance. If there was cash inheritance and we could not locate a beneficiary, that cash inheritance would be paid into the guardian's fund, and the beneficiary would have about 30 years available to go and claim those sort of funds. There wasn't too much information in there, but your step one is to find the executor. You can start with going to the correct master's office. Jurisdiction is important. So where estates get reported is dependent on two things: where the deceased lived in the previous 12 months before he passed away, or where he had immovable property. So that would be step number one, to visit that master's office that's applicable to that particular estate, to see who's the executor appointed, and then go sit down with the executor in terms of understanding what are the next steps.
Sure. And then we had the lady whose mom had passed away. Dad was unknown, but mom registered at Home Affairs as married, and she can't find the ID. And I guess this is where she's stuck.
Yeah. So this is a very common issue. That's one of the reasons why either letter of executorships get delayed at the master's office, or the accounts do not get approved by the master. It's if on the death certificate, the marital status is incorrect. Unfortunately, it is only the family that can go back to the Department of Home Affairs to have this rectified. A starting point would be the document that is actually sent to Home Affairs to register the death. It's called a BI 1663 or a notice of death. We have to make sure that the information was captured correctly on that document. It is true that many things like divorces are not captured correctly, predeceased estates are not captured correctly, and therefore the eventual death certificate of the parent marital status is incorrect. Unfortunately, do not have a quick solution for her. But yeah, don't give up. It's something that is necessary, however, from the master's office, because what the marriage detail indicates or helps the master identify is how the estate needs to be administered. It considers whether it was in community of property, therefore your in community of property share comes out first. If you are divorced, if the correct status is divorced, you have to deal with the divorce first. If there is a predeceased estate, like it is here, the master has to look for things like limited interest. Was there a usufruct? Those kind of things. So it's a little bit more, it can get a little bit more complicated, but it is 100% correct that the master is asking for the correct marital status on the death certificate.
Whilst on that note, Denisha, I found out I chuckled because I found out a couple of years ago, incidentally, when you say that the marital status sometimes is one of the biggest hurdles that you face when winding down estates. I found out a couple of years ago on Twitter, someone had shared who was a divorcee herself and shared that, I don't know what was happening. Long story short, ultimately the application of whatever she was doing got denied because the marital status did not coincide with what Home Affairs was saying. At Home Affairs, it was saying that she was married, but she was divorced and had been divorced for a number of years. Turned out that Home Affairs hadn't followed their processes all the way through to Pretoria in order to change that status. I then went to check my own status at Home Affairs and found out I was in the exact same predicament. So you leave your divorce decree with Home Affairs, Randburg does whatever they're doing, or your respective Home Affairs office, and then Pretoria forgets. Yes. So just check your marital statuses. If you are supposed to be divorced, just double back to your Home Affairs and make sure that you are actually divorced. I forget what they call it, but I remember checking at Randburg, and they were like, yes, your divorce decree was dropped off on this date to this person, and there was a pin attached to it or a code, and then they were like, but it seems as though in Pretoria the final step had not been punched in. So it's a thing that you must. If you listen to us today and you happen to be divorced or whatever, just go check your status that everything has been done thoroughly. Lindiwe, who is out. Well, Lindiwe, I don't know where you're calling us from, but how are you?
I'm great. How are you? I'm
great.
from the Eastern Cape.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so my question is, I'm sorry, I don't want to take too much time, but I'm a granddaughter. So my grandmother passed away in 1971. As we all know, that time was still the apartheid era. She passed away. Her daughter, my mother, never got access to her state, and she had left state away. And I'm wondering, as her grandchild, if I can recover this by any chance.
Denisha?
Yeah, so what you're talking about here is a sequence of events. So grandma passed away, the inheritance was supposed, whether it's property or whatever the case is, goes to mom. If mom's passed away as well, eventually it should go to yourself. You'll have, so I suggest that you start with the deeds office and look at that specific property in terms of, has it been moved off your grandmother's name to your mom's name for it to eventually come to yourself. And if it's not, it's something that we call sequence of events, whereby you will have to go right back to the beginning and make sure it does follow that sequence. It's important for you to also investigate whether grandma had a will, whether mom had a will, and who were the eventual beneficiaries of the will. Because you can't automatically assume that there was no will and the inheritance goes to yourself.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Lindy. Let's jump to Joanne in Cape Town. How are you, Joanne?
Hi there. I'm doing well.
Great. Go ahead.
Just maybe a bit of advice from my experience.
Yes.
I had both my dad and my aunt passed away during COVID, 2 days apart. And my dad's estate was already wound up last year. It was with lawyers. My aunt's estate is far from being wound up because it was with one of these big corporates.
Yeah.
Very well known. I'm not going to mention the name. But I would advise people that if they are able to afford it, and it's actually more affordable than you think, it's about 1,000 rand to have your will with a lawyer, to go to lawyers rather than putting estates with these big companies because they don't have the capacity. We're on the third executor already because the first one worked on it for 6 months and then resigned. The next one worked on it for a year and a half and then resigned. Now the third one is appointed, but they've actually outsourced the case to a set of lawyers in Pretoria, and I'm in Cape Town. Actually, it's working much better now, but because they don't have capacity, and I knew from the start that was actually the issue, that the company has so many people on their books that they can't actually handle the work. And so, and if their staff are under so much pressure, the staff eventually resign because they can't take the pressure anymore.
Yeah. Thank you, Joanne. Point well noted. And I guess different strokes for different folks, but can't be discarded what she's saying. She did tell us who the big financial institution is, but we'll respect her will to not want to say who it is. But those instances do happen, Denisha,
Yeah, they do. 100% they do. I definitely think that lots of institutions suffered during the COVID period. And they continue to suffer, not only in the administration of deceased estates, but even banks. I mean, since they've moved to this hybrid situation, things like even just doing a FICA on an executor is taking us 90 days because of their own backlogs, And one of the things we're trying to lobby is find solutions together by making the banking sector our partners to finally help resolve these sort of bottlenecks in the industry.
Yeah. Let's jump to Umlazi. Smonelo, how are you?
Hello?
Yes, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. Hey, I'm going to be a bit long, but I'll try and cut it short.
Try to be very short, Smonelo.
I'm trying to be very short. My dad passed away in 2020. Mm-hmm. And shortly afterwards, because of the kind of assets that he owned and the kind of credit that he had credit cards, he had vehicle finances and stuff. Mm-hmm. I have 15 siblings. So I called a friend of mine who's a lawyer to come and advise the family on how estates work. Mm. And then afterwards, my bigger sister and my older brother refused to start the process from that time. So my question now is, with regards to credits and all the other stuff that might end up eating up into fully paid up assets, how long do we have as a family to start the process? Because
all right. Your final words of wisdom on that one, Denisha?
Yeah, I'm worried that the estate isn't finalized by now because unfortunately things like interest does not stop on the date of passing. I suggest if one of the solutions that you guys do have as a family is to sit together with the master's office to try and find a resolution of whatever the dispute is between the family. Yeah. I know between 15 kids it cannot be easy for everybody to agree. An alternative solution is if there is a beneficiary in the will and he chooses not to benefit or contribute towards a cash shortfall, he can renounce his benefits and not be involved in the estate.
Aha. Yeah, very interesting. Denisha, we thank you for the time and, of course, for all the guidance and advice. Hopefully some folks got sort of a clearer direction as to where to go to next. That was Denisha Narasan, who is the Executive Director of Estates with Capital Legacy. Let's take a quick pause and then Ashraf is going to come through. Tell us what's coming up today on the National Pulse.
Channel the best father you can be on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3. As psychologist Clint Maggot offers effective coping strategies for men's mental health. Get tips on saving and investing for your child's education. And hear how Dr. Anza Chipetane shapes bright young leaders. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
TS Galaxy Queens and Richmond United ladies both love it in the top half. They want to go as high as possible but not willing to share any points. This is the Hollywood Men's Super League. Catch them Zanti Queens of the beautiful game. TS Galaxy Queens FC tackles Richmond United Ladies FC on Sunday 9 June at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Former Spars Proteas player, Mampo Tsotetsi. Telkom Netball League, I see it's Power Week 2. What is a Power Week? Does that mean just lots of matches taking place all at once, effectively, or?
Okay, so we've just concluded the second Power Week of the Telkom Netball League. It's been here at the Alice Block Arena in Johannesburg. So what Power Week basically means is that you've got consecutive days of netball, so 7 to about 8. This time around, we had 5 days of consecutive days of netball, and that was a Power Week 2. And then on the 13th till the 17th, we're going back for the Power Week 3, the final Power Week. We are going to look to crown a new champion for the Telkom Netball League.
Top Sport on SAFM. You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
We're going live with Ashraf. We're busy talking about our legal conversation on the other side.
Something like that.
It's an important conversation, though, right? It's a very important conversation. Yeah. There's actually a book. I must remember the name of it that I think would be of great use to all of our listeners. Written by John Pullman. John Pullman, the broadcaster's life partner.
Okay.
And she wrote a book around the processes that come upon death. All that administrative stuff that must happen, and it's quite the easy go-to
that
guide.
We don't plan for, right?
That we really don't, and we really should.
In reality, it should be a bestseller because
if
there's one certainty, people will die, and there are people who survive.
Absolutely.
Those who died.
Absolutely.
What a business, man! Just thinking about it.
Death is good business, as they always say. What's coming up today?
Well, lots to talk about now. You know, there are many Zuma children. Tutukile is the daughter of Jacob Zuma, who is part of the ANC, not to get confused with the MK party one.
Yes.
That's now
What's that one?
Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's daughter. This is their common one. Anyway, she's part of the ANC, and she's part of the protests that are taking place today outside the ANC NEC meeting in terms of do not do a deal with the DA, something like that. So clearly there's huge opposition within ANC camps about doing anything with the DA. So we'll talk about that. And then here's someone who spoke to the DA, was part of them was part of them, and then part of an arrangement with them. And now that's history. We're talking about Herman Mashaba. We'll talk to him about 4:45. And then, as I mentioned, the ANC National Executive Committee has to make a decision about where they're going to go. And that's a moving story. They should end at 6 o'clock. But of course, we're going to keep tabs on that story. Absolutely. And there's so much more. But if you missed anything, let me know, because we have to. How do we find that in 3 hours? We probably need a 5-hour or 6-hour show. Yeah.
Right? Right. So that's coming up this afternoon at 3 to 6. You can hear there's really quite a lot on the agenda, but the conversations will roll over. The National Pulse with Ashraf Gara and his team.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha. Arts, culture, and robust conversations with Bridget Masinga.
As we're about to talk about tax, but I just cast my eye on our WhatsApp quickly. I'm seeing a lot of WhatsApps coming through around marital status in as far as life partnership. We are not married, but there's been lobola, but there was no going to the Home Affairs office to sign a marital certificate. We've had this conversation so many times with like 3-4 lawyers, family advocates who keep saying, even if you are lobolad, gijima to Home Affairs and now, today, and go sign your marital certificate. You can always have your white wedding after the fact. But for now, today, gijima uye Home Affairs and go sign your marital certificate for exactly these reasons. And when it comes to these loose terms and relationships that we have now about life partnership and all the rest of it, double back to some of our podcasts from last year, because some of the lawyers did touch on that. There can be legal recourse for you, but it's obviously all case dependent and merit dependent. But mawuloboliwe, please, gijima Home Affairs uhambe uyosayina i-certificate yakho, and then you can have a lovely white wedding in 2-3 years' time, but Home Affairs knows that you are married. All right, we've got Lindiwe Ndenze, who is the founder of LSM Consulting Services and Certified Financial Planner. How are you doing this afternoon, Linda?
I'm good.
Yes.
Bridget, how are you guys?
Ngicela bandla to just get a correction, because on my one document bathi Linda and then on the other one bathi Lindiwe.
Linda Ndenze.
Thank you very much, Sis Linda. Thank you so much. Okay, let's talk about taxes, because tax season is fast approaching. Tax season 2024. It's kicking off in July, if I'm not mistaken.
Kicking off.
Yes?
Sorry, we're kicking that off on the 15th of July.
15th of July. All right.
Yes.
What are some of the most common mistakes that perhaps we are making when filing our annual tax?
From my observation as a professional who works with a lot of clients, is some of the common mistakes are that people don't plan ahead for tax submission. Then they scramble around at the last minute, then end up submitting late, which leads to penalties and just further complications in terms of finalizing your return. So what we always advise is that come up with a plan for your tax submission. You know that it comes up every year in July.
Yeah.
You are going to have a tax submission. So some of the things that I always advise people to do is, number one, ensure that you've got your IRP5 handy with you. Simplest part of the process. Then, if you are a member of a medical aid, please get that certificate. Get it in your documents, ready to file. If you've got a retirement annuity or pension fund, speak to the advisor and make sure you've got that retirement tax certificate.
Yes.
Also handy. Then get all your other financial information or third-party data that you may need for this. Third-party could include flights that you booked for a conference you attended, and you need now to claim for that. So you can imagine if you don't file these things, you have to look for things from July last year. So it becomes quite messy. So we always ask that you keep, at the beginning of the tax year, keep a file and just write there, tax 2024.
Absolutely.
Then throw things in there as things are happening to you. And then quarterly, start reviewing that file so that you keep yourself up to date. Get your logbook up to date. But most importantly, which is the most crucial thing, please make sure you reset your login passwords for SARS e-filing, because people forget to do this. And then it becomes a problem because the system gets overloaded. Then you can't even get in. So please have that handy. And the last bit, if you do need help, contact SARS immediately.
Yeah.
Through their various channels. They are available on the website. But if you can, please contact a tax practitioner.
Yeah.
Near you, to help you through the process. I think that would help a lot of people.
You would be surprised. I've been paying taxes since I was 16 years old, a 16-year-old model. And thankfully, I fell into the hands of some great advisors and tax practitioners. But you would be surprised through the years of me broadcasting. You know, I used to laugh in my earlier years of radio around March, April, when the RIP5's envelopes would be given to distribute. You would be shocked how many broadcasters would not actually pick up those envelopes. They'd just be lying there in reception. And I'd be like, do people not pay taxes? So when you talk about being prepared and having that list of documents, firstly, do the checklist of documents that you require for your tax category, and then tick it off as you get it. You know, March, April, as you get it, tick off.
Yes. Take all of that off, including your expenses, because it's very hard to try and claim for things that happened 11 months ago.
Yeah.
Because you probably won't know where those receipts are. But if you have a file and it's written the current tax year, you can't get that confused.
Absolutely. Let's also talk about the the benefits of filing one's taxes and the tax relief that comes with it. Because I think a lot of people also don't file because they go, what do I get out of tax?
Yeah, common question. When does SARS ever pay us?
Every year.
But you know what? SARS is a good friend. If you treat them right and you submit your returns, they are good. But just to try and motivate for this statement once again, you know, if you file your tax return, you may end up with a refund, or you may just clarifying your debt position, which then empowers you to then manage that debt going forward. So in any case, it's good for the country to submit your taxes, because that's how obviously we run the country, is they collect this money from us and we then run the country indirectly that way. So it is good for that. It's also good just for your tax compliance to keep doing the right thing. I would imagine most people just would like to do the right thing. But most importantly, please submit your return to just make sure that you are aligned in terms of your holistic financial plan.
Absolutely.
Because remember, everything affects everything. And when I mean everything, tax is in everything.
And you know,
Yes,
Linda, continue.
Yes, if your taxes are a mess, sorry, Bridget, if your taxes are a mess, and I'm painting a grim picture, if your taxes are a mess and something happens to you, you die, or you're lying in ICU somewhere, SARS doesn't know. And when they eventually find out, there's a major financial crisis.
And that was where I was trying to jump into your mouth to say, taxes, in light of the conversation we just had a few minutes ago about estates and winding up estates, taxes do not discriminate whether you are alive or dead. SARS will come after you.
they will come out for you because your tax file, guys, doesn't die, and you must then just keep a record of consistency in terms of submitting your taxes.
Yeah, I like that.
That is just better for everyone.
And in our final few moments, there's also people get confused about provisional taxes. Maybe let's explain that a little bit as well.
All right. So provisional tax. So now we know that all individual income earners must pay tax. So that those are individual. We are all regarded as individual taxpayers. But there are some people who are self-employed. They run their own spaza shops, salons. Then there are other people who are regarded as formal business owners, also self-employed, but because their businesses are registered, so they are called business owners. And then we've also got individuals who, fortunately for them, had bought properties. And so all they do now is sit and they collect rentals, and that is their main source of income.
Yeah.
So, and then we've also got investors, people who have accumulated some good wealth that they can receive passive income of. And our retirees also belong in this category of people. So those people are not forced to pay as you earn, so tax monthly. So they are regarded as provisional taxpayers because their income fluctuates. So it's not a standard rate per month.
Yeah.
So because their income fluctuates, it's very difficult to know from a SARS perspective exactly how much to tax those people. So the onus is left upon them. So provisional taxpayers must declare to SARS every 6 months how much money they expect to make in the following 6 months.
Yes.
And they are then taxed upfront for that.
I see.
So, yeah, so that also helps with a debt reduction or liability reduction. So when you declare in August, you are declaring for the next 6 months to February of the following year, but you are liable to pay that debt in August. So that reduces your tax liability for the following year. So those people are provisional taxpayers, and their season ends in January of 2025. So their season is longer.
Okay. All right. I feel as if that when we are fully immersed into tax season, because I know there's going to be questions for you somewhere down the line, that I will ask you to indulge us one afternoon for a slightly longer conversation. And let's explore taxes more and the implications of different circumstances with our listeners. But for today, we thank you very much for the reminder for everybody to get ready for July 15th is when the South African tax season opens up this year. So already start with that file if you haven't already opened up your file, and start collecting all of your RIP5s, your IT3Bs, and every other kind of certificate that you require. And every receipt, as my tax person always says, keep every receipt. I will tell you whether or not it is a tax write-off.
We can claim or not.
Absolutely. Sis Linda Ndenze, founder of LSM Consulting Services and a certified financial planner. We appreciate your time. That is it from myself and my team. We'll see you tomorrow. Inshallah, God willing, we get to do it again.
Top stories: ANC members protest against an ANC-DA coalition, and EFF takes contempt of parliament ruling to court. With the news, I am Dino Mutaum. Good afternoon. We begin with election news. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has dismissed protest outside their special NEC meeting in Boksburg as misplaced, and based on disinformation. The top brass of the governing party is meeting to consider various options of forming a government of national unity after they failed to secure enough votes to constitute government. But a group of party members are protesting against what they suspect would be a possible ANC-DA coalition. They say the DA has proven to be against the ANC by opposing a raft of bills the party has proposed. Mbalula says their protest is unfortunate.
The protest is protesting on the basis of disinformation because the ANC have never said that is going into coalition with the DA. The question of the strategic framework is going to look into the outcome of the elections, and the outcome of the elections, as we all know, does not favor the ANC. And in this instance, we did outline that we're talking to everyone who, in terms of the leaderboard, it is quite clear in terms of the significant numbers that they've received. And so the protest is unfortunate and is really misplaced because this is a time for sober minds.
In other news, EFF's legal counsel has argued that the composition of the Powers and Privileges Committee may give rise to irrationality and bias. The party is seeking to invest